Hey guys, John here. Today we're in Pigments, and a member of my Discord requested to make a rocket launch sound, so I wanted to make a video about that and kind of go over the process because it's a lot of fun here. So let's go to a new preset, and you'll notice it's not 5 minutes because this one takes a little bit more time to kind of get everything right here. So for the first engine, let's go to analog here. Same for the second engine as well, but let's turn this off for now. So going into the first analog engine, we don't need a saw wave, so we can remove this volume here down to -70. And then for the noise, let's go all the way pink noise and bring our volume here, double click this, or actually it goes back to 0, but turn it up all the way basically. So we have some pink noise. Now for this, what I'd like to do off the bat here, I want this engine controlled on a macro because this is going to simulate the low end rumble of that rocket here. So macro number 3, let's put this on the volume here, bring the volume all the way down and bring this all the way up. So macro 3 now controls this engine here. So let's double click this and put low. Okay. So what we need to do now is change this filter here. So we don't need a multi-mode per se. We don't need a low pass. We need a band pass, something kind of like this here. Give it some resonance. And kind of just hone in on that low end stuff. Let's turn this up a little bit as well. So something like that might be nice here. And what we need to do as well, before we dive into some effects here, is we're using this almost in a split way. So we need to go to sum here on the filter routing and go to split. That way this first filter is going to the first bank of effects and the second filter is going to the second bank, because you'll see in just a moment here. So in the effects here, let's switch out this delay for an EQ and then find one of these notes here and kind of just find that almost the low end rumbleness, and you'll kind of know what you're looking for once you hear it. Somewhere around there. So I'll leave that here for now. Let's change from this reverb here and let's go to a compressor here. Get a little bit of compression, maybe a ratio of like 4:1 or something like that. And a little bit of distortion always goes a long way. So I found hard clip to be the best for this. Something kind of like that. And here you can always make this to taste, I suppose. Okay, so for the most part, this low-end rumble is going to be done. So let's turn this one off right over here, and let's go to the second one and turn this one on. So we're kind of doing the same thing, but let's remove the saw wave, and then we're going to increase our volume here. But instead of going completely white noise, we're just going to bring this to the left just a little bit like this, and send this to filter 2. So we have something kind of like that. Now this is going to be one of the most interesting parts of this here. It's kind of boring, but it's also kind of interesting, so bear with me. We're going to be using a function, so let's turn off the magnetize, and what we're kind of aiming for here is just getting some random values, kind of like this. I mean, we could use a random or a random over here if we'd like to, but I found that this way is kind of cool because you're really kind of just drawing in your own shapes, and it's kind of feels a little bit more your own, I suppose. So we're kind of aiming for something like this. I think the first one I made was like 32 points or something like that. Right now we're on 26, 27, and we're kind of just doing stuff like this, right? It's just some random up downs, kind of moving things around. So the whole point of this, if you're kind of wondering what's going on here, so we have this weird random shape, right? So what we need to do is grab this function here, and let's put this on the volume of this engine here, and it's kind of going to do something like this. Right, so it's kind of simulating that high end with a rocket flames kind of going out, and the camera kind of, or the audio from the camera that records this, or the microphones are kind of a little bit distorted, and that's kind of how we were going to perceive it for this type of patch here. So instead of going from a synced, let's go to hertz here, and maybe I think somewhere 1.5 might be kind of good. You can always mess with this later. This is kind of the fine tuning, which takes a little bit longer. But that's okay. So now we want to do the same thing, right? We have this low for the first engine, and then we went high for this other macro over here, right? For the higher part. But we're kind of using this volume to modulate this, and we kind of want to keep it this way. So in this scenario, we have to use the 4 for the actual noise volume here, something like that. So we press a note, and now this is controlling the noise itself. And then we can always go into the utility engine, and I found something kind of like maybe analog noise, send this also to filter 2, turn this volume all the way down, and also bring macro 4 into that as well. So we have a little bit more different type of noise. So both of those together is something kind of like that. So maybe the low end here for the first one's a little different. Maybe something like that might be kind of cool. So moving on from here, for FXB, what we need to do is kind of something similar, right? So let's go for an EQ at first here, something kind of like this. And then we do need to distort this one as well. So let's go to distortion here, and let's go over to the hard clip. Okay, so we have this here, and let's go to our envelope here and add some release, maybe like 3 seconds or something like that. Okay, now one of the last things we need to do for effects, and we can kind of use this, it's really up to you, but having some reverb here, something like that. Now, this is a rocket, so it's going to be in a big place, right? So we need to have the size all the way up here. Pre-delay, it's kind of up to you where you would like to put it here. But yeah, something kind of like this to see how that sounds. So it makes it really big, and this is kind of something that I feel should be on a macro. So let's turn this one down, and for 2, let's use this as well right here for this, and let's kind of maybe give it a good amount just so we have a lot of throw here. So we're going to add reverb for this macro. Okay, so now we kind of have the main things already set up. So what we kind of need to do now is use this filter here, right? This multi-mode. Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this, right? So this is basically going to simulate the rocket taking off, right? So this is going to be macro number 1 here, and this is going to be called position. Something kind of like that, because we see the rocket, right? We see it's kind of taking off, and then we want the rocket to take off. So that's why we're going to be doing this filter sweep to kind of emulate something kind of like that. So let's turn this down all the way over here like that, and then put this to 1, something like that. You can always experiment with different kinds of filter. Maybe the MS-20 sounds a little bit different or better. And try the SEM. The Matrix. And maybe for the low one, let's cut a little bit more off like this. And yeah, that's kind of how that works. The Matrix is kind of cool. The multi-mode is also cool as well. So it really depends on which kind of filter you would like to go with. And that's basically the concept here. Really what's kind of interesting, I think, to point this out before we kind of part ways here, is that the distortion, especially on the high end, is not necessarily something that we're going to actually hear if we're right in front of the rocket. That's more so a byproduct of the camera, the microphones from the camera that actually make things distort. And it's how most of us are going to hear a rocket launch. So in that situation, that's kind of why the distortion here is more so appropriate. But if you want to put yourself actually in that position and see what it probably sounds like, then maybe back off on that distortion. That's the only kind of realistic kind of thing I would like to mention about that. But anyway, that's basically this rocket launch in a nutshell. We have our lows and highs depending on how you want to mix the lower rumbles and then the higher distorted sounds and then the position of the rocket. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you learned something. If you'd like to get a copy of this patch and kind of dissect it, maybe add your own things to it, there's a link in the video description below and it can be yours. So yeah, we'll see you in the next one.